Jason Voorhees. Oh, like the guy from Mortal Kombat.
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
Jason Voorhees. You know him, you love him. He's one of the most iconic horror villains of all time. I mean, he's like right up there with Freddy Krueger, Chucky, Michael Myers, Ghostface, and I don't know, Pinhead.
Gotcha. That's more salt than you wanted.
Even if you haven't seen a single Friday the 13th movie, you know who Jason is. So it only makes sense that for the first time ever, I decided to watch every single Friday the 13th movie this Halloween season. Bear in mind, I only had vague knowledge with this franchise's existence before watching any of these. The only things I knew were that Kevin Bacon is in the first one, and Jason. But besides that, I knew next to nothing about these movies. I was always more of a Nightmare on Elm Street fan, even though, like, half of them are actually good. But this year I decided to take a look at Friday the 13th and see if there was anything that makes it stand out among other slasher films. Also, huge spoiler warning from here on out for all the Friday the 13th movies. And just a quick reminder, I am not a Friday the 13th fan, nor do I have a huge attachment to the series at all, obviously. So I don't know which ones are considered the best or worst out of these. I literally watched these for the first time ever, so everything you see in this video will be my real-time reactions. So, with that being said, it's time to look at some of that good old Jason Voorhees lore everyone's talking about.
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
So like I said, the only things I knew about the first Friday the 13th movie going into this was 1. Kevin Bacon was in it, and 2, that this is the only mainline film in the entire series that doesn't feature Jason Voorhees as the main threat. Other than that, I knew next to nothing about this, and after watching it finally, it's pretty whatever, honestly. I definitely think it's pretty well made given its incredibly small budget, but as a film in terms of enjoyability, it's a mixed bag. I will say the cinematography is actually pretty good, and the score by Harry Manfredini is likewise. I especially liked how all the kills were POV shots from the killer's perspective, as well as the good amount of handheld shots. It definitely adds to the low budget feel of the movie in a good way. Besides that, the acting is pretty cheesy, but I think for what this film is going for, it's not a huge deal. If anything, it adds to the campy nature of it, much like the camera movements do. I really like the Camp Crystal Lake setting. As someone who has always found camping in general to be pretty creepy when I was younger, this film definitely plays into that fear quite well. I think the first half is decent, and I like that we don't see the killer at all until basically the very end. But the second half I think is where this drags it down a bit for me, mainly due to the fact that most of the kills are done off screen, which I'm like 99% sure that was due to budgetary reasons. Nonetheless, it leads to the kills being really underwhelming despite the really good makeup effects by Tom Savini. As for the twist revealed near the ending of the film, I think Pamela Voorhees being revealed as the killer is both really good and half-baked at the same time. For the former, her motivations make sense considering what happened to Jason, so it adds up that she would have this huge prejudice against all camp counselors since that gross negligence is what led to Jason to drown in the lake. But as for the latter, her placement in the movie comes out of nowhere. Like there's no build to it, let alone her being mentioned at all prior to this twist. Wouldn't it have made more sense if she was the head counselor or owned the camp itself? And then you have our main set of characters talk about Jason throughout the movie and the story of how he drowned. That would have made her being the twist villain be a lot more impactful than it ended up being. I still think it's an okay twist on its own, since her character is one you wouldn't really expect to commit all these horrific acts of violence. So on a subversion of expectations level, it's good for what it is. I just think the reveal itself feels random, since the moment she's introduced, she spouts basically all the exposition at once about Jason, and it just feels incredibly rushed.
Did you know that a young boy drowned the year before those 2 others were killed? The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason.
Jason?
I actually like the actor who plays her too, Betsy Palmer, and wish she was just in the movie more besides those final 15 minutes of screen time, which, again, I'm 100% certain was due to budget reasons. Especially since Palmer herself only agreed to play the role since she'd be able to buy herself a new car, and she also thought the film would fail entirely. She was quoted as calling it a piece of shit. But, in a surprise twist of fate, not only did the film not fail, it became a smash hit at the box office, grossing nearly $60 million on its hit extremely small budget of $550,000 to $650,000. All of this despite the negative publicity it got at the time of its release from critics, the most notable of these being Gene Siskel of Siskel and Ebert, who literally spoiled the ending of the film on the show to deter people from seeing the movie at all because he despised it that much. It's ironic watching this now exactly 45 years after its release because it really is pretty tame in terms of horror movies, especially nowadays. There's still some violent moments in this regarding the kills, but considering A Nightmare on Elm Street came out 4 years after this, I mean, it's like night and day in comparison. As for Friday the 13th, it's fine for what it is. I definitely respect it more than I like it in terms of being a pioneer in the slasher genre. It actually holds the distinct honor of being the first independent slasher film to be acquired by a major movie studio, with Paramount distributing it domestically and Warner Bros. For international distribution. Again, I'm sort of disappointed Jason wasn't the main antagonist in this, and he's only really in the one scene near the end, which is ironically enough the best scene in the entire movie.
That was really bad.
Which, fun fact, that scene wasn't even in the original script. Tom Savini himself suggested they add that in instead of just ending it with Alice floating on the lake. So yeah, I'm glad I finally watched this, but it's probably one of the series I'll never watch again. So that's why Friday the 13th gets a 5 out of 10 from me.
The boy, Jason.
Jason?
Jason was my son.
Coming off the unexpected financial success of the first film, Friday the 13th Part 2 addresses two of my biggest issues regarding said film, yet it somehow ends up being a slight downgrade to the previous entry. This time we have the exact same movie again.
Good day to you, sir. Hey, wait a minute, what the hell?
Except this time, Jason is the main threat. Although they try to do the thing again where you're not supposed to know who it is, even though it's quite obviously him, the first 20 minutes of this is completely bizarre, mainly because we have two characters from the first one who get killed off almost immediately, and I don't understand why they were in the movie if that's the case. You could literally cut both of them out and nothing would change regarding the progression of the plot. The main characters in this are somehow even more forgettable than the previous one, mostly just due to the incredibly rushed pacing that doesn't give enough time to set any of them up to make you care about them. Although this saw a slight increase in budget, the film is surprisingly missing that low-budget charm that the first movie had. Even though it looks better on paper, the score is still pretty good from Harry Manfredini once again. I also like the burlap sack Jason uses as a mask near the end of the film. That was kind of cool. But like I said, now this focuses both on Jason being the main threat this time around and all the characters talking about his backstory throughout the film.
But I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason. The girl who survived that night at Camp Blood, that Friday the 13th.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
But although they do fix this problem, the plot is pretty much recycled entirely down to the jump scare ending with Jason again, although this time grabbing Jenny through the window. Besides the reused plot though, the kills in this are what I think make it worse than the first film. Like they're either done too quickly, done off screen, or just not that innovative, honestly. I think the best kill is probably the one where Jeff and Sandra are impaled by a spear on the bed, but even then you don't even see all of it, which again, I'm guessing is due to budgetary reasons and the MPAA guidelines at the time. Also, wait, apparently the actor who played Sandra was 16 when Paramount hired her? What the fuck?
You what?
It's just like the guy game all over again. I sort of liked how Jenny used her child psychology methods to trick Jason into thinking she was his mother. It creates an interesting psyche regarding his character that could have went somewhere, but that scene doesn't even last long. I'm hoping this aspect is explored more in the sequels because I really think that's something interesting you could take Jason as a character. As is, this is fairly forgettable in all honesty. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on, and the nearly identical plot that carries over to this one doesn't help its case either. It's more so weak than flat out bad because there are good scenes sprinkled in there, but I think overall it's just a worse version of the first film. Also, the ending is really funny because the way the skull is shot and the way it looks, I was fully expecting it to open its eyes and turn towards the camera before cutting it black, but that just never happens.
But I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason.
I guess streaming doesn't provide 3D glasses apparently, so this felt like a really big ripoff. Friday the 13th Part 3 features one of the first well-known instances of a movie being shot entirely with 3D cameras by Paramount Production since Devar in 1954, and also before these.
Cake. You are not the guy. You're not capable of being the guy. I had a guy, but now I don't.
And yeah, in that aspect, it's very much a gimmick movie, but it is kind of funny how every shot used to show off the 3D effect is so blatantly obvious and right towards the camera, and it sort of makes the movie worth watching at least once. However, where the second film was a bit more forgiving, even though it did repeat a lot of stuff from the first entry, this I can't really give it that leniency. It is just really bad, unfortunately. The acting is horrible, the dialogue is terrible. The reused setting again of Camp Crystal Lake feels redundant already 3 movies in, and the kills are laughably bad. They're either done off-screen again, fake outs, or just results from a character making a dumb decision. The only kill I found to be good at all was the harpoon gun one, and I think that's considered one of the most iconic ones in the series, and for good reason. It's the only one that utilized the 3D effect well, in my opinion, and it's just a gruesome death that shows off incredible makeup work. What's notable about this one, besides the 3D gimmick, is that it's the first one in the series that featured Jason in his iconic hockey mask, even though he doesn't wear it until the last 30 minutes in the movie, but I digress. I like the guy who plays him, Richard Brooker, and he's definitely the most intimidating version of Jason I've seen thus far in the series. I also wish they did more with Chris as a character, because he doesn't really get to shine until the movie is almost over. They don't even really do that much with their backstory either, which is pretty interesting and could have made for a better movie. But they really wait until a good chunk of the movie has passed to finally reveal what happened to her. And even then, the resolution feels very anticlimactic in my opinion. Speaking of the resolution, the ending is also laughably bad too. For one thing, they again try to do the boat jump scare, instead this time it's Pamela Voorhees' dead corpse who drags Chris underwater. I get they were trying to do a subversion thing, but her body is never shown to be reanimated again besides the recap we get at the beginning of the movie. And even then, it's only hinted at, it's not fully acknowledged. Then there's a scene right before when we see Jason in the window trying to chase after Chris again. But then he disappears in a weird editing shot. We see him just laying dead on the ground. But then we see a ripple from the water as well, showing that he's still alive, I guess. So was Jason's soul transferred into Pamela's corpse? Or was he actually dead and Chris was just hallucinating? It's super confusing and somewhat complicated to me. I'm just gonna assume it was a bad editing choice. Ultimately, besides the aforementioned 3D marketing campaign and Jason donning his iconic hockey mask and attire, there's really nothing in here that lends itself to any positives. Just about everything was poorly done, and the only good aspect about this again is the score by Harry Manfredini, who was joined by Michael Zager this time around. I actually read that they never did second takes for any of the 3D centered shots, and also that they casted more on looks than actual talent. And by God, does it show.
Everybody else has taken off and left us.
You wouldn't do that.
Well, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to go outside and take a look around.
Go outside and take a look around? Bro, there's a 6'3" dude with a Detroit Red Wings mask on. What are you going to look around for? It just seemed like they wanted to make this one as fast and cheap as possible to get it out in time since they were using the 3D cameras. And the film ends up suffering greatly because of that. So that's why Friday the 13th, Part 3, 3D gets a 3 out of 10.
Everybody else has taken off and left us.
You wouldn't do that.
Well, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to go outside and take a look around.
That's great.
This is the movie where George McFly does that random ass dance in that one scene. Alright, that automatically makes this the best in the series. This one surprised me a bit based on how Part 3 was so much of a letdown, but Friday the 13th, the final chapter, ends up being a pretty decent entry in the franchise. This is easily the most well-looking one. The cinematography is really good, and it has a lot of good lighting as well to go along with it. The score is still the most consistently good part about these films, and is once again done by Harry Manfredini. I really like the cast of characters this time, and this is probably the one with the most well-known people who are in it that were relatively unknown at the time of its release, with the likes of Corey Feldman and Crispin Glover starring in pretty major roles, especially the former. This time we're introduced to the character of Tommy Jarvis, as well as his divorced mother Tracy, and his older sister Trish. I really like Tommy as a character in this, and I think he's also a well-established part of this franchise, from what little I know about it. So I hope to see him more in the sequels. Likewise, the kills are probably what makes this the best one for me thus far. They're all mostly really good, and the return of Tom Savini doing the makeup effects definitely shows this. I gotta say, these kills are actually pretty violent this time, and they don't just cut away really quick, which I found to be quite a change of pace compared to the first 3 films, but in a good way. My favorite one is when Jason just throws Tina out of the window upstairs and she just falls to her death on the car. That's another thing. The stunts here I also think add to the violent kills, and they're just good in general. You can't even really tell it's a stunt double doing it, sometimes it's that good. Jason in this is also just legitimately terrifying and kind of badass. This time Ted White plays him instead of Richard Brooker, and his overall creepy presence is felt in White's appearance with this version of Jason. The acting is also pretty good, probably because they casted legit actors this time, unlike the last one.
I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna go outside and take a look around.
What the hell are you talking about?
It's most likely why I was invested more in these characters compared to part 3. I know horror movies are mainly focused on kills and stuff, but I think acting can make or break the actual horror aspects, especially if the actors don't make the environment they're in believable. And it's also just highly distracting if nothing else. Any type of bad acting is, regardless of genre.
The rotation of the Earth is slowing down at a rate of 0.0000006. I'm a pimp.
Well, it took 4 movies, but I finally got to one that I actually ended up liking quite a bit. It's still not perfect, obviously. There's still the pointless recap at the beginning that I still don't understand. And there's also still characters that make dumb decisions. But besides that, it's just a decent movie overall. The characters, the kills, Jason himself, the score, and the cinematography are all some of the best out of the 4 movies I've seen. And it's just enjoyable despite my small issues with it. Also, it's funny just reading about how Tom Savini pretty much only came back to do this one because A, it was heavily marketed as the final entry at the time, and B, he wanted to help kill off Jason, who we created. I just find that extremely hilarious.
Hey, Marty.
Wait, holy shit, is that the voodoo guy from Scooby-Doo? He should have been the one to stop Jason's killing spree.
Excuse me?
Dang it! What are you doing? Now I have to start the voodoo ritual all over again.
Voodoo ritual?
Yes, voodoo ritual. I was about to sacrifice this chicken.
Despite it being advertised as the final chapter in the franchise, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, is followed up by a direct follow-up sequel in 1985. Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. This time we now follow a teenage Tommy as he is tormented by frequent nightmares of Jason following his demise in the previous film. He's sent to a halfway house where, of course, wacky hijinks ensue. And sure enough, that old rapscallion Jason Voorhees goes on another murderous rampage once again. Or did he? Like I said with part 4, I really enjoyed Tommy as a character in that film. And I hope to just see him get more character development if he appeared in the sequels. And here he feels absolutely wasted in my opinion. His character is just reduced to him not really doing anything of note, and he gets silent for the middle chunk of the movie. It doesn't show up again until the climax of the film. I think part of that is both the actor who plays him, John Shepard, and a direction by Danny Steinman. Shepard feels like he's in a completely different movie than everyone else, and it leads to a lot of tonal issues. Everyone else in the cast feels like they're in a different movie, to be honest. You got actors going completely over the top or not giving a care in the world that the camera started rolling, which leads to this being unintentionally hilarious at times.
What you doing up there, Vinny? Rudy, Ratatouille. Woo! All right, and we're off.
A rat-a-tat-tat-tooey. A rat-tat-tat-tooey.
But I think you're really out of line.
Wait, what? Why did he kill that guy? What?
Them damn enchiladas.
Oh my god, dude. There's no way. Wait, why'd she spit it? What? Oh wait, is the dinner what did that guy say again?
Damn enchiladas.
Apparently there was a lot of rampant drug use on the production of the film among the actors and crew, as well as a bunch of other behind the scenes lore that is honestly more interesting than the movie itself. The funniest and kind of sad one is this was made under a fake title, Repetition, and many of the actors had no idea it was the 5th Friday the 13th movie until after the casting had been done, leading to some of the actors being extremely pissed that they were actually in a Friday the 13th movie, which definitely explains then why most of the acting is the way that it is. But also it's tragically comedic how most of the people who have been in this franchise, from what I've read so far, either felt ashamed to have their names attached to it, or be involved at all during their respective releases. This also explains why when they do those pointless recaps near the beginning, the credits at the end say special appearances by so-and-so, even though 99% of it is archival footage from previous entries. Then you have Corey Feldman, who basically was only able to do the cameo in A New Beginning because he was filming The Goonies, which released the same year as this. And in hindsight, he made the right decision. On top of that, he literally shot the footage in the backyard of his family's home with a goddamn rain machine. And the cherry on top was that it was an off day of shooting for him from Goonies. Although this is kind of funny bad, there's still a lot in here that makes it a major step down from part 4. The kills are pretty weak this time around. Most of them are again done off screen or repeats from previous ones. There are some that are pretty good and gruesome, but it's just annoying how this genuinely seems to be done on purpose at this point. Like, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge came out the same exact year as this, and that is way more creative with its kills, and honestly more creepy than this is. And I'm sad to report, but the score is unfortunately not really that good this time around. Mostly because the mixing for it is not well utilized, and you barely hear it throughout most of the movie. The ending I was also a bit confused on as well. Like, okay, so Jason was still dead? Is Tommy Jason now? And why in the hell did that one guy with the axe just randomly decide to kill the not Shelly guy? All of this just felt more complex than it needed to be. It should have just focused more on the traumatic nightmares that Tommy suffers, and how it maybe affects his reality so much that he thinks Jason committed all these murders, but is just suffering severe psychosis or something along those lines. Which I guess it does, but it never gives a solid answer as to why exactly it's happening.
What? No.
This honestly could have made for a decent psychological horror or thriller film, but it instead hints at supernatural stuff. I think it seemed like Jason's soul transferred to Tommy's body at the end, but that could be a bit of a stretch. As is, part 5 is definitely better than parts 2 and 3, but it pales in comparison to the fun highs like part 4, the final chapter, had. I don't know, 4 out of 10.
Lighten up, Demon. You'll feel a lot better after you
Eat your enchiladas.
Dig him up. Does he think I'm a farthead?
Yes. There is an actual real line that is said in this movie. Apparently this one is considered one of the best in the series by both critics and fans of this franchise, so I apologize in advance, but this movie was just so goddamn bad. The acting especially is terrible. Every scene felt like it was the first take, and the dialogue I legitimately couldn't believe some of the lines that these characters said.
God, I'm sore, and
forget about it.
it's a messy act, and what the heck.
Great.
Okay, you guys don't want to do another take of that? I think the guy who plays Tommy this time was just awful, and I hated how he's portrayed in this movie. I mean, this dude literally takes a good 5 minutes at the beginning of the movie, staring into Jason's grave constantly, and then tries to remove the metal rod he shoved into his chest after it gets struck by lightning. And then he gets his friend killed in the process. Like, why is he written like this? Speaking of Tommy, they also just retcon the ending of part 5 where he's revealed to be Jason, or like a serial killer, I guess. And that plot point I actually kind of would have wanted to see in this. It could have definitely taken the series into a different direction that still factors in Jason, but just in a newer context. But nope, instead we just get a Frankenstein version of Jason who is reduced to being a big dumb brute that just kills anyone he wants to now. Like, the continuity of who Jason kills makes perfect sense lore-wise, but here that's just thrown out the window so we can make room for Jason killing people in the most ludicrous way possible. Like throwing people against trees, smashing someone's head into the side of an RV, machete chopping 3 people all at once. I mean, that's just classic Jason right there. Likewise, the kills in this I also wasn't a huge fan of once again. They're either just too over the top and goofy, or shown off screen for the 6th time in a row now. What is going on? Seriously, like, I will never understand this franchise's obsession with doing the kills like that. Every character is like the dumbest person alive, especially that cop character. Holy shit. He might actually be one of the worst characters I've seen in any of these movies so far. And then to top it off, he literally just gets folded like a lawn chair by Jason in the end. So it doesn't sum up his character, I don't know what does. There's also a lot of self-referential and meta humor, which I just found to be pretty lazy and on the nose, to be quite frank. Most of the jokes just feel like they exist so it can excuse itself on how shitty it is. It doesn't feel clever at all or poke fun at itself in a unique way. All of this despite predating Scream by a decade, which ironically ended up doing this type of humor way better, probably because they had a guy who actually knew what he was doing. The lore they randomly had to give Jason a weakness by having him be brought back to the place where he drowned in Camp Crystal Lake, even though it's called Camp Forest Green in the movie, just honestly made me think of what Victor Miller said in regards to the sequels after the first film. He went from being a tragic story about gross negligence by drowning to now just being a full-blown brain-dead monster who kills everything in his path with no clear motivation anymore. And I know the obvious answer is that he's just more marketable that way, but still, why does this movie stray away from that? Even Part 5 did this kind of, but Part 6 just goes into complete overdrive with it. Which brings me into another thing. Why did they compromise the camp this time of literal children as the campers? Like, I know in the previous movies, most of the characters are all kids, or supposed to be technically, more so teenagers. But this makes this strange decision to have like 8 to 10-year-olds at this camp, and then Jason almost kills them near the end. Why would Jason ever do this? What reason would he have to even go after some random little kids who did nothing at all, or even provoke some sort of trauma out of him like the previous teen characters did in the other movies? The whole point of his character is that the mere sight of seeing the very thing that caused him to die makes him grow a strong prejudice, much like his mother did. It's why this proponent of his character is the most single consistent thing about these movies. It is literally the whole reason why Jason Voorhees does what he does. So again, why would Jason attack these random little kids?
Real dead meat. So, what were you gonna be when you grew up?
Wait a minute. This kid's name is Billy?
This isn't real enough for you, Billy. I'm not real enough for you.
Oh, shit.
It wasn't real enough for Georgie.
I get the critical and financial disappointment of Part 5 was mainly the result of why all of this was the case, but this is really the best they could come up with. The best way I can describe Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives is it feels like a parody of itself. This has the highest budget of any Friday the 13th movie thus far, and it feels like all but just went to Jason's costume design and that one RV stunt near the middle of the movie. It's probably one of the worst in this series for me so far in this ranking. However, I will give it this. At least it has some unintentionally funny moments, and there's one or two kills I found to be okay at most. But dear God, everything else about this just feels insultingly bad. There's just no way it can get worse than this. Right? Right?
Real dead meat. So, what were you gonna be when you grew up?
The way I immediately got excited when I realized this was the movie where the famous sleeping bag kill is. Part 6, Jason Lives, saw the conclusion of Tommy Jarvis as a character in the franchise after his consecutive appearances in parts 4 through 6. Now in part 7, The New Blood, we follow Tina Shepard, a psychokinetic teenage girl who unknowingly resurrects Jason from Camp Crystal Lake once again, and thus goes on yet another murderous rampage. Although this one is a step up from part 6 in terms of quality, I still think it's not very good at all. The cinematography I think is well done, and I like how there's shots that harken back to the original film, with lots of POV and handheld shots. The score is back to being good again, done by the longtime musical collaborator Harry Manfredini, and joined this time by Fred Mullen. The kills I actually think are pretty good for the most part, and Jason is probably at his most terrifying portrayal since the final chapter. Speaking of Jason, this time he's played by Kane Hodder, and he's also the only actor in the entire franchise to play the character multiple times beyond a single film. Hodder apparently portrays Jason in every film after this, excluding the crossover film Freddy vs. Jason and the 2009 reboot. I really like his presence with the character, and although he's 2 inches shorter than my favorite portrayal of Jason thus far, Ted White, a lot of the shots make it appear as if he's taller. That could just be due to the rest of the actors being significantly shorter than Hodder is, but I still think it definitely adds to his threatening nature in the film. His overall look and design I really loved as well. The way he's just a rotting zombie carcass by this point now, and you could see all of his bones coming out of his body, and it's just really good work by the makeup team. However, like I said, even though I think the quality definitely stepped up a bit compared to the previous entry, everything else involving the story and characters is bordering on jumping the shark territory. For one thing, the entire plot involving Tina is set up like a psychological drama film, and then Jason just happens to exist in the movie. Then the second half of the film, and especially the ending, turns into a mix of Carrie and Firestarter, which I wasn't on board with at all. I get part 6 lean more into Jason being an explicitly supernatural threat, but I think having part 7 go full-blown supernatural slasher feels so out of place at this point in the series. I actually read that one of the original concepts of the movie came from Barbara Sachs, which was noted for falling in a similar vein and plot to Jaws. It would have followed a corporate land developer covering up the previous Jason Voorhees massacres in order for them to profitably build condos on Crystal Lake. Like, how cool would have that been? You could even do some of the self-referential and meta humor they attempted to do in Part 6 and apply that to the plot of this one instead. I mean, the amount of commentary they could have come up with would have made for such an interesting movie, in my opinion. Maybe people in town try to pass off Jason as an urban legend or some tall tale in order to hide the actual terrible truth within the town itself. They could even delve into the fact that he was actually a victim, not the monster he was eventually made out to be by the townspeople long ago when he drowned, and how they try to consequently cover it up as a result. But nope, instead one of the co-writers for the movie, Daryl Haney, said, what if we have Jason fight some teenage girl with psychokinetic powers? And he just didn't think about anything further past that to make it somewhat interesting in any way. So this movie just ends up feeling like a ripoff of both those aforementioned films without any substance behind it to make it stand out in a significant way. We're already 7 films in and a little over past the halfway point of the franchise, and it already starts to look like it's running out of steam now. It's not a good sign when this was originally supposed to be a crossover film with A Nightmare on Elm Street, mainly because that series was on its 4th entry and was outgrossing Friday the 13th twice as much financially. Again, this idea would eventually come to fruition in 2003, but by then, both franchises were obviously not as popular as they once were at that point. As for Part 7, The New Blood, while there's some stuff to admire that is improved upon compared to the previous film, it still isn't enough to mask the amount of issues this still suffers from. Even with probably one of the most iconic kills in the entire franchise, it also has one of the dumbest ones as well.
What the hell?
And that probably sums up this movie in a nutshell. 3 out of 10. Literally the most accurate part of this entire movie of the New York experience was when Jason was on the subway chasing Reddy and Sean, while everyone else doesn't care at all that a 6'2" hockey masked man was on board with them. Anyways, Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, sees us ditching Camp Crystal Lake entirely, and instead we see Jason take on the Big Apple. Oh, hold on, folks, I'm actually getting a quick word for the filmmakers that actually doing this. Go ahead, guys. It's actually on a cruise ship for most of the movie. And it's not until the last 30 minutes of the movie we're actually in New York. And it's even worse because I'm repeating everything you say in the microphone.
Oh, for crying out loud, SpongeBob! You didn't get the job!
What?
Welcome to New York.
This has to be one of the biggest false advertised titles in cinematic history. Yes, you read that right. Instead of the near endless possibilities with Jason being dropped in New York, that concept isn't even explored until the final chunk of the movie. The whole last 15 minutes of this should have been the entire movie, and the worst part is that the opening credits make it seem like it is going to be the whole movie. But nope, instead we just spend a full hour on a cruise with characters that don't even end up making it the entire trip. I'm going to try and refrain from repeating myself a lot in these reviews of the Friday the 13th movies, because there's not much I can really say anymore with these entries. The cinematography and lighting are honestly too good for a movie like this. The acting, I think, is actually pretty okay for the most part. And like I said, the last 15 minutes of this are the best part of the entire movie, and it's what the whole thing should have been. Besides that, the kills honestly suck. There's not a single one that remotely sticks out to me at all. And the fact that for 8 straight movies now, 90% of them are done off screen, like this feels like some sort of sick prank or an inside joke with Paramount or the filmmakers attached to these films.
You're going down, young man. You're going down.
I can't believe this. She keeps getting up. I'm so exhausted.
Welcome to New York.
They also weirdly try to do something with Jason's backstory, which never goes anywhere because it's almost treated as a joke.
What a sick joke!
Also just isn't consistent with it either. So you're telling me this man could be submerged and swim through a lake just fine. But then towards the end of the movie, when there's a giant pipe filled with water that breaks in the sewer, he all of a sudden gets defeated super easily. Like, if you're going to delve into that aspect of his character, at least be logically consistent on how you approach it. And also don't leave said approach on an anticlimactic note. Ultimately, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, would be the final entry in the franchise to be distributed by Paramount until the 2009 remake. The remaining sequels would instead be held by New Line Cinema. So knowing that studio, hopefully with the final 2 films before the 2003 crossover with The Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm willing to hold out some glimmer of hope that at the very least the kills improve a lot more than anything else. But with it being 8 films in now, I don't know if that hope will be sustainable. As for Part 8, it's just bad. It's really bad. It might be the worst one I've seen thus far just because of the misleading title and the kills being some of the worst in the entire series. I get like there were budgetary reasons for why they couldn't shoot the entire thing in New York, but why would you make your whole marketing about Jason taking over Manhattan then? The biggest problem with this is that it should have just been one or the other. Either set the entire thing on a cruise ship or boat and have it be a claustrophobic type of horror film, or have those last 15 minutes of this be the entire movie and not just the ending. Also, the alternative title just sounds a lot better. Friday the 13th Part 8, Terror in Times Square. I mean, Jason Takes Manhattan sounds more like a Muppet movie. Even the poster looks exactly like the one from the Muppets Take Manhattan. Oh my God, there's no way.
Oh, I like that. That's nice. That's a warm family moment.
I agree. We can all learn something from that.
Welcome to New York.
Well, they've officially done it. After 9 films over the course of 13 years, we have officially seen the series jump the shark.
They did it! They did it!
Do you think with a new distribution in New Line Cinema, they learned from the previous outing on how to deliver on their film title? Yeah, spoiler alert, they didn't. Not only does this waste probably one of the coolest movie titles in film history, not only does this waste arguably the best plot synopsis of any Friday the 13th movie, not only do they waste one of the coolest characters in the whole franchise with Creighton Duke, not only did they miss a huge opportunity to actually do some decent satire this time, not only did they waste having the original director return in a primary producing role, not only did they waste an ending scene that sets up a crossover that never happened for another decade after its release, but this somehow manages to be all of these things as well as just being an absolute god-awful movie and then some.
Hallelujah! Holy shit! Where's the Tylenol?
If you thought Jason Takes Manhattan was bad and never delivering its title, Jason Goes to Hell the Final Friday took that challenge and said, hold my beer. If nothing else, this made me infuriated that they wasted an absolute golden opportunity to 1, have Jason actually go to hell, and 2, possibly go on some sort of high note after the critical and financial disappointments of the last 3 sequels. And if that wasn't bad enough, not only does Jason never go to hell in this, but he isn't even in it for pretty much the entire movie. Doesn't that really defeat the point of a Friday the 13th movie? How in the hell do you just cast aside your biggest cast cow in favor of a body possession style supernatural movie that never even fully utilizes this concept? No joke, right after the opening credits roll, this cool concept, in theory, immediately dies within the first 5 to 7 minutes of the movie. What the actual fuck?
Is this it? Is this really life? No, this isn't life. This isn't anything even representing life.
On top of that, Jason only really possesses like 3 to 4 people the entire movie, so it never takes full advantage of what should be an absolute slam dunk script. And if that wasn't bad enough, New Line Cinema and director Adam Marcus had the absolute gall to literally make up Jason lore on the spot just so it can conveniently fit this shitty script.
Only through a Voorhees can he be reborn. And only a Voorhees can kill him. With that.
What? Remember how in Freddy's Dead the Final Nightmare when the filmmakers randomly decided to give Freddy a secret daughter that was never mentioned at all in any of the previous movies? And also how that movie was just as shitty as this one is?
Come on, John!
Get out of here now, Jason! Now!
Hey, you forgot the power glove!
Oh, of course, because they forgot the power glove.
You forgot the power glove!
Again, Jason Goes to Hell basically rehashes that completely misused lore inclusion, and we learn that Jason Lee actually has a secret sister. I'm sorry, that alone is enough to make even the biggest Friday the 13th fan go into a literal state of psychosis that I can't even feasibly describe. I know at this point they were out of ideas and didn't care. The exact same thing happened with the Elm Street movies, and yet they never looked at how that series crashed and burned to at least learn from those mistakes. But the biggest crime this movie commits is Jason himself. Like I said, he's not even in the movie pretty much at all, besides the beginning and the end. So that already should count as some sort of sick, twisted joke.
What a sick joke!
However, his design and overall look itself is somehow an even bigger boss job than not featuring him in his own movie. For one, the mask doesn't even fit over his face anymore, so it just looks really awkward. Second, he's like way too stocky and has like gray strands of hair. Third, the makeup for him just looks too rubbery and it borders on being a Halloween mask at this point. I literally don't know if any other version of Jason can top this one, because this is easily the worst looking one out of the franchise. Other than that, everything else filmmaking wise is just not good once again. I really don't like Marcus's direction. The script is one of the most half-baked, nonsensical things I've ever seen played out in any of these movies. The acting's bad. The kills surprisingly stay the same and don't improve even with this being distributed by New Line Cinema now. The only positive I can say for it is that there's some scenes with really nice makeup and practical effects, and even the end when Jason gets dragged to hell, which I'm willing to bet the entire $3 million budget went to those practical effects, is the coolest scene in the entire movie. Although the Friday the 13th franchise saw it changing distributions from Paramount to New Line Cinema, Jason Goes to Hell managed to only gross $16 million off its $3 million budget, making it one of the lowest grossing films in the entire series. And yeah, no, it's the worst one. It's not even close. If Jason X or the 2009 reboot is somehow worse than this one, I'd be shocked beyond belief. As for this, it wastes a cool title, a cool concept, a cool bounty hunter character, the original director from the first film being brought on as a producer. It is nearly god-awful on almost every front imaginable. It almost makes Jason Takes Manhattan look like nothing in comparison. Also, this not only tries to salvage itself by throwing in a half-hearted tease of Freddy Krueger by grabbing Jason's mask at the end, but this also tries to somehow rope in the Evil Dead series as well, which makes this even worse when you add in the factor as well because it's never mentioned at all before this, as well as making Jason as a character more convoluted than it needs to be. Also, when Jason turns into that demon slug near the end of the movie, it kind of just reminded me of that one Smosh video where Ian gets like a tapeworm.
Something about a magical tapeworm. Stapler? Tapeworm!
If I was a Friday the 13th fan, I legit just wouldn't even acknowledge this movie's existence in all honesty. It's that awful. 2 out of 10. Jesus Christ, man.
Giving you exactly what you've always wanted to see. Come on.
Welcome to
hell! That out of hell!
Following the financial disappointment of, the Crystal Lake Research Facility? What the hell is that?
Really? The Crystal Lake Research Facility? What is that in Crystal Lake?
Anyways, of Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, as well as just the overwhelmingly negative critical reception it saw with both critics and fans alike, it seemed like the franchise had nowhere left to go. Which brings us to Jason X, the final film in the series before its long-awaited crossover with Freddy Krueger and Freddy vs. Jason, and before being rebooted in 2009. Not only does Jason X feature the highest budget in the series thus far, but it also sees Jason leaving the iconic Camp Crystal Lake setting entirely once again. The titular Jason is cryogenically frozen for over 400 years until he's woken up in the year 2455, where he now attempts to continue his murderous ways once again. Only this time, it's on a Space Fleet Star Trek-esque type of crew, and we even see him turn into Uber Jason. For the last 15 minutes of the movie, of course. Yes, you read that correctly. The most hyped up thing in this entire movie that I knew about before watching is not even featured until the end of the film. Which begs me to question, are these movies just glorified Ponzi schemes? Just false advertising stuff in their movies that either never gets shown or is shown for a small amount of time? I mean, for 3 straight movies now, it's been this exact same model that's used. So it's no wonder why people stop watching these after part 5, because it promises you something that never gets any grand payoff or satisfaction from you as a viewer. I mean, you feel ripped off essentially. It's just a shitty business model in general. And it's literally because after some point when their box office started to diminish with every passing sequel, Paramount and New Line Cinema tried everything they could to get people to see these things no matter the cost. Want to see Jason dropped in a New York setting? And let's just have an hour of the movie dedicated to being on a cruise nobody asked for. Want to see Jason literally go to hell and then possess a bunch of people? And let's actually have him not go to hell at all. As a matter of fact, let's not even have him in the movie whatsoever until the very end. Want to see Jason get frozen until he wakes up in the future and then see him turn into a superhuman cyborg? And let's just have him be normal Jason for most of the movie. And then, when there's less than 20 minutes left, let's have him turn into Uber Jason. I could not even imagine if I was a fan of this franchise, because I think I'd lose my mind if I saw these come out in real time and not have them deliver what they heavily advertise so much. Anyways, as for the movie itself, sure, it's a step up from the cinematic train wreck that was Jason Goes to Hell. But it's still just not good at all. The direction just feels so aimless, and the acting, oh my god, the acting, it just sucks.
I don't think he's out there.
Why don't you just stick your head out and have a peek?
Guys! It's okay, he just wanted his machete back!
Hey, Slappy! Got a little something for you. I just saved your ass.
You know, don't get cocky. It's still 9-3.
Yeah, but I got my groove on now, you know what I'm saying?
You guys might want to run. We've already discussed this.
His unique ability to regenerate lost and damaged tissue. I mean, it cries out for more research.
Special effects are awful despite this having a relatively higher budget than the previous movies. The editing's bad. The space setting is just a ripoff of Star Trek with the plot of Alien. The only good things about this are Kane Hodder as Jason, and the kills are actually pretty good this time. The frozen head kill Jason does towards the beginning of the movie is probably one of my favorites of the entire series. Likewise, I think Jason's design is at his best, and I love Hodder's presence and appearance compared to Jason Goes to Hell, where he literally just looks so rubbery and fake. Speaking of, when we finally do get Uber Jason, he's absolutely badass and is one of the best versions of Jason in the films. His design is cool, and I like how he's just a 6'2" cyborg with a futuristic hockeyish mask that fits the look so well. But again, it feels like Jason is barely even in it, not even counting the Uber Jason version. We instead focus on the space crew that isn't interesting whatsoever, and most of them just say lines of exposition or are killed before you could even care enough about them at all. Oh wait, I think the fuel lines were still attached or something, I don't know. Sadly, this will mark the final appearance of Hodder as the titular Jason, before he was replaced by Ken Kirzinger in the aforementioned Freddy vs. Jason. As for Jason X, it was officially released in April of 2002, where it again received negative reviews and underperformed at the box office, with it grossing $17 million worldwide on its $11 to $14 million budget. It's telling how this had the biggest time gap in any of the films, releasing nearly a decade after Jason Goes to Hell in 1993. If A Nightmare on Elm Street fell out of place by the time it hit the 90s, Friday the 13th is that for the early 2000s. What started out as an influential first film that cemented itself within the slasher genre slowly devolved into essentially being a parody of itself, also much like its counterpart.
You forgot the power glove!
Similarly, it seemed like every filmmaker who took on the moniker of the franchise kept turning Jason into something he wasn't, until we reached the very apex of that shared sentiment with Jason X. 3 out of 10.
Guys! It's okay!
His unique ability to regenerate lost and damaged tissue. I mean, it cries out.
Hey, Slappy!
At long last, Mr. Voorhees has completed his long-winded transformation from a boy who drowned at Camp Crystal Lake to a guy taking revenge on every camp counselor that he sees, to a literal Frankenstein monster, to a supernatural entity, to a demon, and now as a superhuman cyborg. So many versions over the course of 20 plus years, yet he will always simply be known as Jason Voorhees. Okay, now it's time for the best one. Okay, so I actually watched this film last year as a part of me rewatching all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and my thoughts are still pretty much the same from then, although I will say I enjoyed it a lot more this time. The cinematography, the stunts, Ronnie Yu's direction, and the kills are all pretty good. The only thing I will mention this time that's Elm Street related is that this is probably my favorite version of Freddy Krueger. I mean, holy hell, he's like legitimately menacing and terrifying. I completely forgot he was portrayed like that rewatching this a year later. I also just think he's comedic in the perfect amount. It's enough to where it still makes him scary, but not too much to where it feels over the top like the Elm Street sequels failed to capture as time went on.
You forgot the power glove!
It's like the perfect combo of Wes Craven's New Nightmare Freddy with a mix of the Dream Warriors version, and I love it. As for reviewing this purely as a Friday the 13th film, well, my main criticism previously was that this feels more like an Elm Street movie rather than a Friday the 13th film. And yeah, that still remains true. Jason is purely used as a vessel in order for Freddy to be summoned by the townspeople in Springwood through fear since they have long forgotten about him. While he's technically used as a plot device somewhat, Ken Kirsinger is decent as Jason. I love the stunts involving him, and I think his 6'5" stature definitely fits the tone of what they wanted for this version of the character. That being said though, I don't really like his design that much. Also, while Kirsinger being 6'5" is definitely a plus, there's also shots where he feels a little bit too tall, if that makes any sense. I know it seems like a silly complaint, but Kane Hodder was like the perfect height, I believe, for Jason. And even New Line Cinema and Yu's excuse for why they casted Kirsinger over Hodder was mainly height. Even though Robert Englund is only 5'9", and Hodder would have been still way taller than him. But I get what they were trying to achieve vision-wise. Other than that, Jason has some really good kills, and with Ronnie Yu's stylish direction, finally gives the character that brute strength presence that's been a constant theme over the years. Every kill he has is felt visually, with people flying into things like houses, trees, and tables, and it's literally amazing. We also get a tad bit of Jason lore as well, learning that he was frequently bullied for his appearance by other campers, and that he couldn't swim, hence part of the reason he originally drowned. However, in this one as a nitpick, they reintroduced that he has a fear of water, yet at the end when he falls in the lake after stabbing Freddy with his own glove, and then the final shot is him rising out of said lake completely fine. I don't know, I just feel like the whole franchise is never consistent when it comes to Jason's fear of water. It only seems to come into play when it conveniently fits the story, which does get annoying sometimes. Plus, I honestly like some of the side characters, like you got Dipper Pines, the bully from A Christmas Story, the guy from Scary Movie, and then, wait, there's no way. Olive Garden guy? Ultimately, the long-awaited crossover between two of the most iconic horror villains of all time seemed to be worth the wait. After being in development as early as 1987, the film finally released in August of 2003, and became the highest grossing film in both respective franchises despite mixed reviews critically, with it grossing $117 million worldwide on a $30 million budget. Kind of a cruel, ironic twist that the two crossing over became the most financially successful film that wasn't a solo movie in either franchise. That said, I really like this movie now. Even though it does take a bit to get the actual Freddy vs. Jason parts, I say it's worth it because every battle they have is absolutely awesome if you're a fan of either franchise. They both show off their strengths of what made them so iconic in the first place, and Yu's direction really elevates the experience to a whole new level. I think stylizing this as a slasher movie with action-esque sequences fits what Yu was going for, and it cranks everything up to the maximum. And for this being the last true film for each franchise before being rebooted, I mean, what a way to go out. You couldn't ask for a better ending than Freddy Voorhees and Jason Krueger duking it out to see who's the last man standing. 6 out of 10.
Guns have no effect on me.
Is that right?
Yes.
You forgot the power glove!
Great graphics.
Something feels off here. Oh wait, who produced this again?
Ruin!
Much like the Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 remake, I had never seen the 2009 reboot of Friday the 13th before, and the only thing I knew about it was Bay produced it through his Platinum Dunes company, which also remade or rebooted other franchises like Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Amityville Horror. So it's absolutely no surprise at all that the 2009 reboot of the franchise turned out to just be straight up bad. I may have taken Jason X for granted. I mean, at least that had.
Hey, Slappy!
I don't really have a whole lot of positives in all honesty. I mean, at least it's only 90-ish minutes, I guess. There's like 1 to 2 kills that are okay. And I like how this one just starts out with Jason as the main threat, I guess, instead of the first one where it's Pamela Voorhees.
Jason was my son.
Other than that, though, everything else is just a classic case of generic subpar filmmaking. The cinematography and visuals are completely flat. The characters are forgettable. The kills are mostly bad. And most of them were done with CGI and post-production instead of done on set. The dialogue is terrible and the editing is poorly paced. So in this one, they like combine elements from the first 4 original films, and all of them just feel so lazily slapped together. The original film is just the opening. Part 2 is like 15 minutes. Part 3 is like only 5 to 10 minutes in spurts. And the only thing involving Part 4 is the cabin where the characters stay at. Likewise, I hate how Jason is portrayed in this movie. For one thing, he randomly comes across the hockey mask in the barn, and that's how he gets it. Like, I know in Part 3, he just puts the hockey mask on in a random scene, like, off-screen. But at least, like, that's established that there was a character that had the mask beforehand. In this, like, there's never shown to be a hockey mask before the scene happens. Second, he is way too quick and agile to the point where it feels too unrealistic to who he is as a character. He's also just some mastermind serial killer now, I guess. Like, one of his kills, he perfectly pinpoints the exact spot where to shoot the arrow through the guy's head, and then he can sense when that one girl is under the dock. I mean, sure, the hockey mask is accurate, obviously, but the rest just results in too many changes to where it almost feels borderline out of character, in my opinion. That's another thing about this movie, too. It doesn't really feel like a Friday the 13th movie. It's so just dark and gritty. It almost has, like, the tone of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but with, like, the style of Saw.
Why is that dead guy breathing?
Out. I'm secretly evil.
I will say, I think his actor Derek Mears is good for what he's asked to do. Also, he was in Twin Peaks: The Return, so that also gets him some bonus points. This canonically means that Mr. C is more powerful than Jason Voorhees is. Think about that for a second. I don't know. At least it's not as egregious as what they did with Freddy Krueger in the 2010 remake. Oh.
Why are you screaming? I haven't even caught you yet.
Wow. You were really proud of that one, weren't you? I mean, that wasn't like a side joke or something you said under your breath. No, you made sure everything went quiet to deliver that incredible zinger.
Surprisingly, the 2009 reboot grossed nearly $93 million worldwide on a $19 million budget, despite negative reviews. However, there was supposed to be a sequel plan, but that just never happened, I guess, for unexplained reasons. Like, the same thing happened with the 2010 Elm Street remake. It also made a lot of money as well, and also got negative reviews, but there was just never a sequel that happened either. As for the 2009 Friday the 13th reboot, it just joins a long line of other forgettable reviews that has nothing interesting to bring to the franchise. They should have just went with the original origin story idea. I think that would have made for a more interesting movie than what they decided to go with. Instead, by reusing elements from previous movies while also trying to reboot the franchise at the same time, creates a film that doesn't gel any of these things together well, which ends up resulting in the most bland thing they could possibly come up with. 3 out of 10.
This is amazing! It's like a ride in an amusement park!
You mean like at Platinum Dunes Studios?
Turn it off. Turn it off.
And now it's finally time to rank all these bad boys.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
Number 12, Jason Goes to Hell. The Final Friday. Number 11, Friday the 13th, the reboot. Number 10, Jason X.
Hey, Slappy!
Number 9, Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Welcome to New York.
Number 8, Friday the 13th, Part 3. Number 7, Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives. Number 6, Friday the 13th, Part 7. The New Blood. Number 5, Friday the 13th, Part 2. Number 4, Friday the 13th, Part 5. A New Beginning. Number 3, Friday the 13th, 1980.
Jason was my son.
Number 2, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. And finally, my number 1 favorite Friday the 13th movie is Freddy vs. Jason. At long last, I finally made it to the end of the Friday the 13th films. Overall, I'd say it was an interesting journey, to say the least. There's only like 1 to 2 of these I'd ever watch again in the future, but I was shocked by how so many of these were either pretty weak or just flat out bad. Especially when comparing this to other slasher franchises, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre has Dennis Hopper, Scream has Jay and Silent Bob, A Nightmare on Elm Street has one of the guys from Robot Chicken, Leprechaun has Rachel from Friends, even Chucky has a kid who's canonically gender fluid.
You know, I have a queer kid.
You have a kid?
Gender fluid.
And you're cool with it?
I'm not a monster, Jake.
And what does Friday the 13th have?
Enchiladas.
All jokes aside, though, I honestly like Jason as a character, and I think this is just a case of said character being more iconic than the franchise is, in my opinion. Also, the fact that every person involved in the series seemed like they felt embarrassed or ashamed to be attached to these films whenever they were released. Tack on the eventual misleading marketing campaigns Paramount ended up doing, and it just felt like a franchise destined to crash and burn at some point. I will say, however, at least every single one has interesting behind-the-scenes stuff. Except for the reboot.
I'm not worried about it! I'm not worried about any of this!
And I think these movies are fun to binge watch for the first time if you've never seen them before like me. I did read that apparently there's supposed to be a prequel series by A24, mainly focusing on a young Pamela Voorhees played by Linda Cardellini.
Dr. Jonathan Jacobo
was my son.
While also focusing on a younger Jason, and that sounds kind of interesting. I'm hoping that can bring the franchise back in some capacity at least. But for now, the end of the road has come in terms of the movies. However, if there's one thing I learned about this series, it's that there's 3 things certain in life: death, taxes, and Jason always comes back. Wait, who the hell is Jason again?
Jason was my son.